Got it? So 3 reps at a time. Yeah, start right at the top.
Okay? Foot contact on the split. There's some very good coaches that teach back foot touches first. And some people say both feet land at the same time. I teach both feet land at the same time. That's not to say back foot first is wrong. Fred Lau, 3-time Olympian, owns multiple national and international master records right now. He's the lightest American to clean and jerk 400 pounds. He teaches back foot first. Can't say he's wrong because it worked. Okay? So it's either back foot first or both at the same time. The other big mistake a lot of people make, I myself also make this mistake, is kicking a back foot, back leg straight. Most people don't have the hip flexibility to get away with a straight back leg and keep their hips underneath them. So what happens usually when somebody kicks a straight back leg is it pulls their hips out from underneath them that way. And they end up catching like this. And now you're trying to catch the bar over your center of gravity and over your center of mass, but you're leaned like this. So usually it ends up out the front. Okay? That makes sense? So bent back leg, big front foot. Those are the big issues on the catch. So vertical torso, keeps everything straight up and down. Bent back leg, reach that front foot. Questions on that stuff? Okay? Those are really the basics that we're going to go over. The coaches are going to break it down a little more finely, but at least you've seen it. You've seen some of the common issues. You can work on some of those common mistakes. Any other questions on this stuff? What time we got? 32. Perfect. Quinn, you ready to go? Yeah. Any other questions on this stuff before we turn it over to Quinn?
What about repositioning from your clean to your getting ready to your?
Yeah. What about it? Is it okay?
Should everyone do it? Or?
No, I don't think everybody should do it. I think that's completely individually. I don't, I can't. It screws me up too much. Some people do it, and they get away with it. Like, it's completely dependent on the person. Some people, they need that wider grip to jerk from. If you don't, if your jerk grip's here, and that's where you catch your clean, there's no sense in adding a movement where things could go wrong. Some people lose the weight on the adjustment, they pop it, and they catch it funny, suddenly you're in a bad place. So I mean, that's athlete to athlete. Like, anything else on the basics? Split jerk?
Yes.
Yep, both slightly in. Either straight forwards or slightly in. Either one's fine. Back toes. You want to get all 5 of your back toes on the floor. You don't want to be here where you're just on your big toe. Turn that over, helps bend that knee, and get all 5 of those toes. If you have really little toes like me, you got to turn far. Anything else? Okay. We're going to turn it over to Quinn. Quinn's going to do a brief talk and a little bit of warm-up stuff for you guys before we break into our 3 groups. Ready? Let's do this.
All right. Can I have the staff, please? Okay. I'm not going to talk for very long. We need to get moving. We need to lift some weights. I wanted to dispel a couple myths, and I want to talk about 2 different concepts. We get a lot of questions with these guys. You know, Colin, what do you do for mobility? Your overhead position looks so good. Your snatch is like perfect. Your ass is almost touching the ground. The answer is those guys don't do a lot of mobility work. And I'm going to talk about 2 reasons for this. One is obviously their tissues and structure has adaptively changed to their activity. Colin's hips don't feel quite like some of your all's hips. And the bottom position of his squat mimics this. However, Colin has harped on position, and I want you guys to write this down. Position dictates mobility, okay? So, you can do all the mobility work you want. You can roll, you can bend every joint in your body, but if you're not controlling your position, you will not be able to use that mobility, okay? For example, if your rib cage is out of position, your shoulders have lost mobility. We can test this. I'll show you guys some fancy tricks that look cool, but it's just a demonstration of how position either limits or gives mobility. Pelvis position dictates your hip mobility. Okay, so what Colin was saying earlier, if your pelvis is dumped forward, all of a sudden you've lost that hip mobility and you're going to lose control in your trunk. So it doesn't matter how much passive range you have in your joints if you can't control that position. Foam rollers, lacrosse balls, band distracted mobility drills are fantastic. They're really, really powerful, but they don't change your structure, okay? No matter what anybody tells you, our human organism is not that fragile. Thank goodness, because all of your asses would be a square from sitting on your chair for 30 minutes. What that stuff does is it sends a neural input. And so you foam roll or you do some type of lacrosse ball drill or a band drill, and if you send a neural input to your brain, you decrease that tone, and then you've got to use it. So if you're spending 20 minutes doing those things, you've probably lost the benefits of the drill that you did the 15 minutes ago, or the very first one, okay? So, for example, and Samantha Lower and I were talking about this yesterday, if your erectors or your lower back gets kind of tight during a workout, you jump on the foam roller for 20 seconds to knock down that tone so you can get to your next set. Or if your hip is getting a little pinchy, you put a lacrosse ball there for 20 seconds, knock down the pinch so that you can go train. That's how those implements are really, really powerful. They're just tools to get you through, but they haven't addressed the actual cause, which is usually position, stability through the trunk, etc. Does that make sense? Because if we lay you guys down, somebody can overhead squat and it looks god-awful, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're tight. Maybe they just can't control their mobility, right? And so if I lay them down and move their joints around, they move just fine, but they just don't have the stability. Make sense? Yeah.
So are you opposed to foam rolling post-workout?
No. Not opposed to it at all. I just think that, 5-10 minutes post-workout to just reset the system is plenty, because you're just sending a neural input. You're not changing structure. And so doing it for an hour is, like, if you have the time, it's fine. You're not going to do any damage. It just may be a waste of time. Does that make sense? Does anybody, just a quick demonstration, and we'll just get to moving around. Does anybody have an overhead squat position that's a little bit difficult to get into, but they have no problem reaching down and touching their toes, like no injuries, just overhead squat is difficult? Anybody? Want to be a demo? We'll fix it. Like, mind overhead squatting? Side profile, yeah. More narrow with your hands. And then come up, stand. Now squat. It's honestly not good. Go sit down. Anybody worse than that? I just want to show you how we can control your position and make things a little bit better. If you all have fantastic positions, then we'll just go and start moving around.
I think I'm pretty bad.
Okay.
I don't do them often.
Squat for me. Yeah, overhead squat. Real quick. Okay, so we have issues. Put the PVC down. I want you to hold this guy like a foot in front of you. Profile. Squat straight down. Oh, it's better, right? What happened to those tight hips? His ankles move through. So we're not addressing the shoulder, but are there mobility issues here? Really? I mean, stand up. Overhead squat. Didn't change his hip joints. What we did was change his position. So something happens in the middle there. Does that make sense? So if we were to hike your heels up, over here. Overhead squat, heels up, yeah. Now, I've already screened the ankles with that counterbalance squat. His ankles move just fine. Squat down. Better, right? So we gave him a counterbalance. Now, if he had tight ankles, I don't think he does. Come up, because I saw him squat without the heel lift, and it looked just fine. Then an ankles would be a mobility issue, but I'm seeing stability. I'm seeing position. Does that make sense? It can be the same. Lay on your back. Straighten your legs together. Lift this leg as high as you can. Get back down, not bad. Now I want you to pop your ribs up, arch your lower back real bad. Now lift that leg as high as you can. Is that harder? Yeah. Back down. Breathe in for me. Exhale all the way. Abs. Exhale, exhale. Good. Exhale. Hold it. Lift that leg as high as you can. Good. Okay. Back down. Arch up real bad. Arch, arch. Now lift that leg. Good. Is that harder? Yeah, it makes a difference, right? It makes you less flexible. Okay? Position dictates mobility. So just keep that in mind. We're not going to give you any mobility drills today. We're going to put a barbell in your hand and tell you this is the position that you need to be in, and that's going to dictate your mobility. If you're not strong enough to maintain that position, well, that's what training is for. That's what practice is for. But that's also why you can sit down. Thank you. That's also why practicing with an empty barbell and paying more attention to your warm-up sets is important, right? Because that's where you're going to get that practice. And that's what's going to change tissue over time. It's not foam rolling in bands, it's moving in the correct position, and then your tissues adapt because you repeatedly put that stress on them. So if you are repeatedly in a poor position, where your joints, like your overhead squat, right? If you mimic that, that's where your joints are going to adaptively change to, right? And no passive mobility is going to go from a band to being able to fix that. So I got to be about position, okay? So it's all a tool. We just got to use it for what it is. Go ahead and put your pen and paper down, and we're going to come over to count.
Split. You have this stance, she's just gonna press. Just like the first one, so the bar's traveling back. Okay? She's maintaining her balance. She's gonna have lots of weight back here on the back side. And the other thing is, she's not drifting forward as she presses. So when you guys are doing this, huge tendency, you're here, as you press, you're gonna want to drift forward. Okay? You have to stay back. You have to put the torso back, relax, and press. Okay? So, if you guys partner up, set your hips up, try to get with somebody that's similar height to you, that way it's not a struggle getting the bar off the rack, and then we'll get start warmed up. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Bars over here, these 3 racks on this side.
Maybe 260. Yeah. I mean, it's not that simple, but once you get it done, you can get on your way to doing something like that. So now we're just going to see you guys do some cleans. Okay? We're going to spend probably about maybe a little less than 5 minutes. We just want to see you guys in movement, what we need to work on. Okay? So let's try to get into those positions that we work on. Okay? So be as patient as possible. Okay? Then extend. Okay? Don't come here. Stay here over the bar. Okay? So you should really feel yourself pushing through the ground, chest coming up.
Don't muscle it. Make sure you're sitting all the way up.
Okay, so focus on fast speed, stop on fast, faster, okay?
No, that's great. You want to think of it as like a leg press. If you're pulling, it's not really a pull, it's a push, right? If you're here, on a leg press machine, it looks the same way, right? This is where you want to be before you go to jump. When we jump, if I were to just try to touch the ceiling, which I can do, I'm just not going to show you, I would jump from here, right? I wouldn't do this, and I wouldn't do this necessarily, but this is my position. This is the ultimate goal. But to get there, you've got to push, or else this is where you're going to be, right? If you pull back too soon, and then the bar goes through. So just think about that, patience.
Okay, so let's get a partner, get a bar,